Hey guys, TrainerDC here, coming at you with another video. If you guys haven't been keeping up with what's been going on within the leak community lately, a lot of information regarding Generation 10, which is codenamed Gaia, has been leaking on Twitter. If you don't know what I'm referring to, there are two videos on this channel that I have made so far discussing the leaks. I will lead a card above to the most recent one. Definitely check that out because we are continuing from where we left off in that video. A lot of this information here is coming from Moot, who is a leaker on Twitter. As to his credibility, whether or not this is legit, again, take this all with a grain of salt. I have heard from people that some of the information he has posted in the past has been legitimate in regards to the anime. So again, take this all with a grain of salt because we do not know the legitimacy of this information, but it is rather interesting to discuss. And quite frankly, I actually do believe what I'm reading here because Cowman, another leaker, has been corroborating some of this, and Ball Guy said we can trust Cowman. And Ball Guy's the one who did the leaks for the Mega Evolutions in Pokemon Legends ZA. So without further ado, let's get into this. So where we last left off, we have a new tweet here from Moot saying he sent me a list of 41 more. Game Freak stated that they'll pick a few from this that seem workable and attempt to bring them in. No promises though, apparently. What he is referring to here is the Apotheosis Pokemon that we referred to in the last video. Essentially, if you don't know what I'm talking about, certain Pokemon are going to be able to essentially have a Mega Evolution-like transformation that is known as Apotheosis. In the last video, Moot said that there are 8 that have been finalized, with 24 more being worked on, and apparently there's a list of 41 more that have been thought of. Are these going to be put in the final game? Most likely not. Most likely most of them are not going to make the final cut, but these are Pokemon they are working on right now. If you guys don't know already, Game Freak in general, whenever they're designing a new generation, they design a lot of new Pokemon. I remember reading a while ago that a new generation gets like 500 designs or something like that, then they dwindle down what they're actually going to put in the final game. And obviously, you know, the final dex count is usually around like 120 to 140 brand new Pokemon and forms in the more recent generations that we've gotten. So yeah, apparently there's more Apotheosis Pokemon that are in development here. Next thing up, we have Moot saying one more thing: these gods may not be as benevolent as they appear. And to go off of that even further, he says, actually one of the most perfect images I could use for the world building. Do these gods really have your best interests in mind? And the image here is from One Piece saying, what do I look like, an angel or a devil? And basically what he's referring to here is these god Pokemon, these Greek god inspired Pokemon, may not exactly have our best interest in mind. I'm presuming what's probably going to happen is each god is going to have their own distinctive outlook on the Pokemon world. Like maybe the Pokemon they base Hades off of, for example, turns out to be an evil Pokemon. Maybe Zeus ends up being evil, and so on and so on. And some of the gods are good, some of them are evil. So basically it's going to be a war between the Greek god Pokemon. That would be a pretty cool plot line that they could have within this game, but again, that is all speculation. Don't necessarily think that all these god Pokemon are necessarily going to be good. Next tweet we have here is regarding the next Pokemon game after Generation 10. Apparently the game following Gen 10 is forecasted for 2028. I think this makes sense, right? Gen 10's coming out in 2026, 2027 is going to be your DLC for Gen 10, and then 2028 will be your remakes or whatever they decide to do next. I think this all makes sense. Nothing too surprising here. The next tweet we have here is a bit of a big one, again coming from Moot here. Apparently there was a meeting recently, and we will get into this a little bit later in more detail because Cowman has more details on said meeting, but apparently there was a meeting between Game Freak, the Pokemon company, and the anime team, and apparently at the meeting a question was raised by a merchandising corporate partner about how wide the scope of the region's Pokedex was going to be. Game Freak went into a bit of detail about how they decide the size of a dex. They have a bank of potential Pokemon, basically ideas that were either scrapped from previous generations or just things that were never used. They stated that they currently have around 200 Pokemon in this bank. They also come up with new designs specifically to fit into the lore and atmosphere of said region. They also may adjust the designs from the aforementioned bank to fit into this group. From there, they consider various lore factors like the size of the actual region, its biodiversity, as well as meta factors like feasibility of workflow. Do they have the pipeline to make a lot of new designs? How do things like form changes and regional variants fit into that number? For each new mod, they need to create the model, animations, movesets, abilities, etc. It's a lot of work. With that being said, Mr. I, most likely Iwado, said that they're currently aiming for 120 new Pokemon / regional forms, of which 70 are in their final stages of development. So there's a lot to unpack here. A lot of this is in line with what we already know about the way the Pokemon company works when it comes to designing a new generation. We know that there is a bank of old ideas that they keep at Game Freak that sometimes come to light in later generations. Like, for example, the most infamous one I think of this is Zygarde. For those of you that don't know, there was a leak back in the day with Pokemon Black and White where basically someone was 100% accurate on everything they said in that leak except for one aspect of it, and that was that there were going to be 157 brand new Pokemon in the Pokedex, and the last Pokemon in the Unova Pokedex was going to be a Green Serpent Legendary. Well, we had 156 brand new Pokemon in the Unova Pokedex, and the Green Serpent Legendary that he was referring to in that leak ended up happening the following generation with Zygarde. So that would be an instance of a Pokemon being scrapped in one generation and being saved for another. There's other instances of this happening, like for example, a lot of people have speculated that Komala was actually supposed to appear years prior in a previous generation but ended up getting revived for Generation 7. So this is something that we know happens. This is something that Game Freak does all the time. They have old designs that for whatever reason got cut from a particular game, but they're good quality designs, so sometimes they save them for a later date. Like with the Terror Leak last fall, there was supposed to be a Flamingo Pokemon in X and Y. Well, we got Flamigo in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So again, a Pokemon that was brought back from the dead and introduced in a later generation. Obviously, we know they create new designs. That's nothing crazy. This part here, though, is saying they take things like form changes and regional variants into consideration when coming up with their final total. And this is something we also know. If you look at Pokemon X and Y, there were only 72 brand new Pokemon in the Kalos Pokedex, but we got a total of 48 brand new Mega Evolutions that generation, making our grand total up to 120 new Pokemon / forms, which is typically what they try to aim for the new generations that they come up with. Same thing happened with Scarlet and Violet, for example, and same thing happened with Sword and Shield, right? We got Gigantamax Pokemon, which add to the Sword and Shield total. Same thing with the regional forms. And with Scarlet and Violet, we got Paradox Pokemon, which were, our new takes on old Pokemon for this generation. But this time around, they actually got counted towards the final Pokedex number. Last thing I want to touch on from Moot is something that we're going to touch on again really soon from Cowman, but there's one piece of this that's exclusive to Moot, and it's something that I heard a few days ago but was told not to publicly talk about. The codename for the gods is Majin. Through artifacts like sigils, they grant Apotheosis to the apostles. Now, what I was told not to talk about the other day is Apotheosis. This is the apostolization that will be happening. Apotheosis is the new Mega Evolution. This is what it is called internally. As to whether or not this is going to be the final name for it or not, we do not know, but Apotheosis is what I have been referring to as apostolization. Apotheosis is the transformation that certain Pokemon will be getting. How will they be getting that? By preying upon the gods? Well, we have more details on that now. So this was posted by Cowman on his Discord server and has since been deleted. We have a lot of information here regarding how exactly the gimmick works and some of the lore regarding these new god legendary Pokemon that are going to be based on the Greek gods. So we're going to go through this and I'll explain some of this as we're going through this, but gods themselves are not necessarily Pokemon. They are extra dimensional beings or Majin. They're essentially from another dimension. This to me is very similar to what happened in Generation 7 and even in Generation 9 as well in terms of Ultra Beast and Paradox Pokemon. Essentially what it seems like these god Pokemon we've been referring to that are going to be based on the Greek gods, it seems like they're actually going to be from another dimension and they're going to be their own classification of Pokemon. So basically, you know how Solgaleo and Lunala are technically speaking Ultra Beast alongside Necrozma and all of the other Ultra Beasts that we know of from Generation 7? They are Pokemon, they are catchable in the game, but they are technically Pokemon from another universe, hence the name Ultra Beast. Now with the Paradox Pokemon in Generation 9, these are Pokemon from the past and future. They are Pokemon still, but they are distinctively different in that they are Paradox Pokemon. What I'm imagining here is that these godlike Pokemon that are going to be based on the Greek gods from Greek mythology are essentially going to be Pokemon from another dimension. They're being called Majin internally by Game Freak. Who knows if that's the actual name they use in game. So let's just call them Majin for now. But basically these Greek god inspired Pokemon are going to be Majin. They're going to be their own separate classification, just like Ultra Beast were in Sun and Moon, just like Paradox Pokemon are in Scarlet and Violet. They're still going to be catchable. You're still going to be able able to battle with them, but they're not Pokemon from our universe. One thing not in this excerpt here, but was mentioned in the server as well that has since been deleted, is that currently it's unknown how many Majin we will be getting in the game, but it might mirror the real Greek gods in that there will be 12, maybe even 13 of them. These gods possess powerful Pokemon to exert their will on the island they live on, explaining lore reasons for snowy islands and tropical environments. The mechanic works by an item called a Divine Sigil. I know it says similar here, but is actually meant to say sigil. Gaining stats depending on its god, certain god boosts certain stat combination. Game Freak talked about this. They wanted players to engage by which gods they want to use for their specific Pokemon. A specific Pokemon will gain a more meaningful buff or a form change, our Apotheosis Pokemon, in the image of said god. It's an item-based gimmick similar to Dynamaxing, helping every Pokemon but having form changes for specific Pokemon. The source mentioned it seemed really similar to the original idea for Generation 7. Only specific Mons get form changes. Every Mon can get a stat boost. Stats are unique to every specific god. The form changes get stat boosts like Megas, ability changes, type changes, stat changes. There's a lot we just mentioned here, so let's break this down real quick. It seems like in this game, the Majin are going to possess powerful Pokemon in order to exert their will on the islands. Why is this the case? Why don't they just come to the islands themselves? We don't know. Maybe they're stuck on another plane and we're going to have to go into there to capture them. Just like how in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we had to go into Ultra Space to catch the Ultra Beast. Maybe it's something similar that's going to happen here in Pokemon Gaia in Generation 10. I could see this being a core part of our story. Maybe these Pokemon that these gods possess end up being like our totem Pokemon or our alpha Pokemon in prior iterations of the series, and essentially we're going to have these boss battles with certain Pokemon that are possessed by these Majin, but again, that's just speculation on my part. These Majins are going to make the environments of each island change, which I guess in turn is going to cause the regional variants that we know are coming to each island. Now, as for the gimmick itself, so basically the way this new mechanic is going to work, apparently it's called Divine Sigil, and essentially from what I understand based on the leaks before from this server that have been deleted, essentially players are going to pick which Majin they want to assign to each Pokemon, and each Majin is going to affect different stats and whatnot, and certain Pokemon are going to have Apotheosis, which is essentially Mega Evolution like transformations that happen with certain Majin. For example, let's just throw this out there real quick. This is not something that's confirmed by any means. Let's say the Zeus Majin is attached to Charizard, then Charizard is going to undergo a Zeus Apotheosis transformation. Let's say that the Athena Majin is attached to a Venusaur, then Venusaur is going to undergo an Athena Apotheosis transformation. That's basically what this is going to be, and supposedly according to Cowman, this mechanic is going to integrate better within the region's mythology than Megas do with the Kalos region. Overall, this is a lot clearer of a picture of what this gimmick does, and in my last video I was criticizing it for sounding too similar to Mega Evolution, but quite frankly, the more I'm reading about this, while yes, it is somewhat similar to Mega Evolution in that there are going to be certain form changes and transformations that happen. You're going to have stat changes, you're going to have ability changes, you're going to have type changes. Yes, it is similar to Mega Evolution, but the way this works is different. We're going to be basically assigning a different Majin to our Pokemon that will change them in some way, and some Pokemon will just happen to work well with these Majins. They have a connection to them. Maybe these are chosen by the Majin, maybe these are the Pokemon that the Majin possess, that they will undergo Apotheosis and they will have a form change. That's essentially what this gimmick is, and I think it's really cool. Honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing what this all looks like, and I'm hoping this is all real because I actually do really like this gimmick, and we'll have to wait and see on all this and whether or not this actually happens when the game comes out. I'm not going to read the rest of this because it does get a bit repetitive, but essentially the only new piece of information from the last excerpt here, if you guys want to read it all, you can go ahead and do so, but essentially one of the Pokemon that can undergo the Apotheosis transformation, and once again we will go over all of the Apotheosis Pokemon in another video once the final tally comes out, but one of the Pokemon is going to be a new Pokemon from Generation 10 that is going to be a monkey, and essentially it's going to be like the poster child of the new gimmick, of the Apotheosis gimmick, and basically what this monkey is going to do is regardless of which Divine Sigil you give it, it's going to be able to undergo Apotheosis. So essentially what I mean by this is, let's say you give it the Zeus Divine Sigil, it's going to have an Apotheosis transformation based on Zeus. If you give it the Poseidon Divine Sigil, it's going to have another Apotheosis transformation based on Poseidon. If you give it the Hades Divine Sigil, it's going to have yet another Apotheosis transformation based on Hades. So essentially what's going to happen happen with this monkey is it's going to have an Apotheosis transformation for every single one of the Majin in this game, essentially being like our Eevee, but for the Majin Apotheosis transformations. In other words, it's going to get multiple Mega Evolution-like transformations based on every single Majin, every single Greek god-inspired Pokemon that is introduced in this game. That's pretty much it in regards to the new information we have regarding Gaia Pokemon Generation 10. The only additional things I can tell you from a post that was deleted at this point is apparently the lore of this game is going to be based on Arabic mythology, specifically jinns, which is why these godlike Pokemon are being called Majin, which is the Japanese term for jinn. You might be saying to yourself, Trainer DC, why would they be using Arabic mythology in a Greece-based region? This is something that they do all the time. Like, for example, Pokemon X and Y obviously take place in France, but the whole mythology around the game is Norse mythology. This isn't exactly something new that they haven't done before. The only other piece of information is apparently gyms will be returning, but it is unknown if there will be 8. I would presume there's going to be 8 gyms, right? They're not going to have 5 gyms and call it a day. I'm assuming what's going to happen structure-wise in this game, it's going to be very similar to Scarlet and Violet. There will probably be 8 gyms spread across these different islands. There's probably going to be something regarding an evil team like we had Team Star in Scarlet and Violet, and there will probably be some wild Pokemon we have to quell, the new alphas, if you will, of this game, which are going to be Pokemon that are possessed by these Majin based on the Greek gods. So yeah, all in all, this game seems really, really interesting. I'm really liking what I'm hearing about this game, and quite frankly, this might be one of the most ambitious projects the Pokemon Company has ever created, because just from what we're reading so far, and the same thing even for the ZA leaks that we've had, card above if you don't know what I'm talking about with the ZA leaks, a lot of the story seems to be really complex and well thought out as opposed to some more recent Pokemon games. A lot of times within Pokemon, it seems like the story is kind of just, you know, it's kind of just lazily put together and it's just kind of forgotten about. Like, there's certain games where the story stands out. Like, for example, the story obviously of Black and White stands out. Obviously, the story of Sun and Moon stands out. But a game like X and Y, it felt like the story was kind of an afterthought. And it seems like with not only Gaia, but with Pokemon Legends ZA as well, the story is going into the spotlight. They really want to put emphasis on the story and they are really fleshing it out. And just everything I'm hearing about Generation 10, the lore, the fact we're getting godlike Pokemon that are from another dimension, they're going to be called Majin internally right now. That might not be the official name for them, but they're going to be based on the Greek gods. Basically, they're going to possess regular Pokemon. They're going to cause some of them to have this Apotheosis transformation, essentially a mega evolution that's caused by these Majin Pokemon. This all sounds absolutely awesome. And while this is all the information we have for now, keep your eyes out to the channel. Be sure to subscribe for more because there are more leaks coming for sure, because this is only the start of this. The only thing I haven't touched on, and I will save this for another video, is I mentioned earlier that there is a total of 8 Pokemon that are finalized to receive Apotheosis forms. There's 24 that are being worked on right now, and there are an additional 41 that they have thought of giving Apotheosis forms to, but they haven't really progressed any farther than that. The list of which Pokemon are included in those lists is starting to leak out. We don't have a full picture yet, which is why I haven't gone over it yet in this video, but be sure to keep your eyes peeled to the channel. Subscribe for when that video comes out, because this is all absolutely crazy and this is unprecedented. We're getting substantial leaks for a game that has not even been announced yet. We didn't even get the game prior to this game. We didn't even get ZA yet, and we're getting leaks for Generation 10, which is a year and a half away. This is really a crazy time within the Pokemon community. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about all this. What do you guys think about everything we discussed in this video, from the Majin Pokemon that are going to be from another dimension that are based on the Greek gods, the fact that the new Mega Evolution-like transformation is called Apotheosis internally right now, the fact that the Majin are going to be possessing other Pokemon to try to enforce their will upon the islands. There's just so much info here. Let me know what you think about all this down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to see more content like this from Trainer DC. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.